Alrighty, welcome back to Running Rants and Recaps. This is where I'm going to recap my training, upcoming events and all things running. So what I discussed in the last video was basically the goal, sub 240 marathon, which is coming up. It's now about 3 weeks away, and I picked up a pretty bad back and hip injury about 5 weeks out. So right now we're about 2 weeks and 2 days post when the injury occurred. So I'm just going to recap the week that's been. I'm back into running, which is a very positive thing, and I just want to discuss the rehab process, how I've been dealing with getting this hip and this back, trying to get it back into good health, while also trying to maintain my fitness and not lose too much fitness. So it's a real balancing act right now, but things are on an upwards trajectory, thankfully. So like I mentioned in the past video or the previous video, this is an old recurring injury. I've been slacking on my strength and conditioning and it's reared its ugly head. So what have I been doing so far to get it back up to the capacity it's at now quite quickly, really? So after last week, which I recapped in the previous video, I've been really ramping up the strength and conditioning. So getting back under a barbell to load the back, doing lots of core work. I noticed my adductor muscles were feeling very weak, especially on the injured area where the lower back pain was occurring. I've got weak adductors on my left leg. So I've been doing lots of hanging knee raises, holding a ball between the knees, trying to crush the ball, adduct at the hips, and just try and strengthen up that inner thigh area while doing some hanging knee raises. I've been doing lots of other sort of core work on the floor, increasing the intensity of the Supermans, which I discussed in the previous video. Lots of lunges, some calf raises, and then I started adding in some plyometrics just on 2 feet, just lots of hopping on 2 feet, just to try and keep some spring in the calves and in the Achilles while trying not to jar the lower back. I couldn't do any one-legged plyometrics, but 2-legged was stable enough. I wasn't putting much force into the ground. I was more trying to keep a fast cadence and just keep that sort of not turnover, but the cadence of the feet and the calves moving quickly. So just really light, really small hops standing on one spot. And then I started incorporating some TRX, so some hamstring curls and some quad extensions, which also bring in the glutes and the lower back and the core muscles, and just really trying to reinforce strength back into the body, strength that I've been sort of neglecting, and also added in some crawling patterns along the ground. Crawling patterns are really good dynamic full body movements that sort of reconnect the body, sort of mimics the gait cycle in a way, where you've got opposite hip to shoulder working and things like that, and it sort of reveals other weak areas you may have in the body as well, brings in your shoulders, your hips, even your feet. So yeah, I like doing crawling patterns on the ground as well, bear crawls and things like that, and just added in a little bit more upper body as well, like pull-ups and push-ups, just to essentially, the idea is move as much as possible without aggravating the area. That's essentially what my game plan is, while also trying to specifically re-strengthen the area and force hypertrophy into that area, force blood flow into that area, get it moving again. And I've been doing lots of hill walking as well, just walking as much as possible, because walking essentially is slow running, and just getting the heart rate elevated slightly. And when you add in some hills, it's surprising how much the heart rate actually does get elevated. And so in this time frame, so right now it's Sunday, I just completed my first sort of middle to long distance run, which I'll get to shortly, which I'm super happy about. But the running started again on Wednesday just been. So I did a 6 kilometre run starting off at around 6:30 per kilometre, which is, you know, for someone who's essentially in 2:40 marathon shape, 6:30 is, I don't want to say disappointing because I was running and it was a relief that I could get running again, but yeah, it was going backwards quite a lot from where I felt literally a couple of weeks ago. But anyway, that was the first run, and it was encouraging, but it was also a bit of a wake-up call as to how bad this back really was. But then the next morning I did the same distance and I managed to drop under 5 minutes per k for a couple of the kilometres, and it's almost like something just got switched back into gear by forcing myself to run the night prior, or shuffle really, it was just a shuffle. But so that gave me a lot more hope, and then I actually went out for another run that night after work and managed 8 kilometres and got even faster and even started creeping down under 4:30 per kilometre. So now I was starting to get close to sort of 3-hour marathon pace, given it was only a couple kilometres, but this was within a 2-day time frame. The change was drastic, so this really excited me, gave me a lot more hope. And then so the following day we actually had a public holiday, Friday just been, so I went back up to the local peak where it's essentially just lots of trails that either go up or down. There's not much flat, it's just a lot of climbing. And this was the most encouraging run. I've found since I've had this injury, going uphill or downhill is a lot less pain on the back than being flat. So I essentially took off and ran for 14 kilometres, which also accumulated nearly 800 metres of elevation gain. So it was a lot of climbing for 14 kilometres. So it essentially turned into a threshold session, and what was amazing was I've never actually been able to run those trails without walking some of the sections, but this run I literally ran the whole thing without stopping, which just blew my mind. So it showed that I've got this new fitness. It's still in the body, the heart and the lungs, they're conditioned, I'm fit. I just have to make sure this, whatever's going on with my back and my hip, can catch up to the fitness that has been built over this past 6 months of hard training and, you know, all the years prior and everything. So that was very encouraging. I know I'm fit. It's just now about getting this injury back up, healed enough to get to the finish line. So, and the other amazing thing was on some of the downhill sections, I was looking at my watch and it was saying I was running at 3:30 per kilometre, and it felt like I was jogging. And I'm not saying this to be cocky, this is just literally, I kept having to check my watch. I just couldn't believe what it was saying. And it still baffles me that I could run at that pace downhill, yet running a minute per kilometre slower on the flat felt more difficult and more painful in my back. So it's an odd injury. It's frustrating because the race that I'm preparing for is on the flat, where I'm currently at my worst. But I know the fitness is there. So anyway, without rambling on too much, this 14 kilometre run took about an hour 20 something, an hour 24. It ended up being 5:58 per kilometre with nearly 800 metres of elevation gain. So I was pretty happy. Well, I was very happy with that pace. I thought that was good. I wasn't flying up the hills by any means, but like I said, I didn't need a stop. So at the 14 kilometre mark was when my hip told me it said, you know, you need to stop now. It started flaring up a little bit, so I stopped. I ended up walking another 6 kilometres, clocking up what ended up being 1,000 metres for the whole 20 kilometres up in the hills. 14k walk, 6k run. 14k run, 6k walk. So stoked with that, banked that, happy with that. And this was all in the Vibram 5 fingers as well, which I want to touch on because I've been playing around with that theory in my head that I discussed last week, and it's yeah, it's quite interesting, I think. So next day I was sore, which is not a surprise. My calves were sore because I hadn't run in so long and I hadn't pushed a pace for a couple of weeks, and my back was a bit tender as well. I could feel the hip. So all I did, this was yesterday, all I did was walk yesterday and did a lot of recovery, got the release ball on the hip, on the back, heaps of foam rolling and recovery, massage gun on the calf muscles, wore my compression sleeves, just tried to amplify the recovery and rest, made some music, made some, working on a drum and bass track at the moment, that was fun, just tried to chill out and tried to not stress that I was in a bit of pain again. And so this morning's plan was to meet up with some friends and join them for the warm-up of their long run workout, but their warm-up pace right now, they're all in the 240 group, their warm-up pace is 4:30 per kilometre, and it was sort of bugging me. I was sort of tossing and turning in the night thinking this is probably too fast for where I'm at and how sore I am from the Friday session. And I couldn't sleep. I woke up at 3 o'clock this morning and I just had a bad feeling. I just thought if I go along to this session I'm going to hurt myself. So I got out of bed at 3:30 and I finished off the documentary of the Barkley Marathon. I will get back to my run, but this is how the morning went. I finished off the documentary of the finisher documentary about Jasmine Paris, who's the first female to complete the Barkley Marathon, and man, that's a inspiring watch. If you haven't watched it, that is a extremely motivating documentary. It's about 45 minutes long, and yeah, it's a real tearjerker. It's an amazing watch. So watched that this morning while I was having my breakfast and just doing stretches and just trying to release my back because my back was still really tight this morning. My glutes are sort of seizing up really quickly at the moment. I think they're trying to protect the back and also my hamstrings. So I'm sort of having to force them, sort of stretching them out just to release the back. And anyway, so I took off for a run and I basically just decided I'm just going to go as slow and as far as I can comfortably. I'm not pushing any pace. This is just an aerobic run. I already pushed the pace on Friday. I've somewhat gotten away with it, so let's not get greedy here. And yeah, it was good. I've averaged around about 5:30 per kilometre, which is, you know, once again, it's way off marathon pace, but ran for just over 2 hours, so it was nearly 24 kilometres. So yeah, whatever that pace is, somewhere between 5:15 and 5:30 average, I think, off the top of my head. But anyway, I'll go look at the stats after this and see how it was. But yeah, I mean, cardio wise it felt like nothing, but it was just making sure the back wasn't getting any worse, and it feels really good now. It actually feels better than when I woke up. It feels nice and warmed up, and it feels like that run has sort of loosened it up a bit. So that's really encouraging. I need to add up actually how much Ks I've covered this week. I've sort of been recording all my walks and all my runs, and I've actually clocked up a lot of hours, which is really cool. I mean, most of it's really low, sort of zone 1, zone 2, but is what it is, doing what we can. And yeah, this was another thing I wrote down that I wanted to discuss, which I'm finding really interesting. I'll get onto the Vibram 5-finger topic in a moment, but one thing I've noticed from doing these long hill walks is the change in time perception when moving and when running. And the first time I sort of noticed this phenomenon was when I first attempted a backyard ultra marathon, and ended up doing 15 hours, so I ended up doing 100 kilometers, and I'd never run more than, I don't think I'd ever run more than 40 or 50k before that day. And what happened after this, once I'd recovered from this ultra, it had just shattered down this barrier in my mind. And then all of a sudden, once I'd recovered from it, I could just go out for a 30k run, and it felt like an hour had passed, or it felt like half an hour had passed, sort of thing. It completely changed my time perception, and I'm sort of experiencing that now from being up in the hills and just trying to clock up as much time on my feet as I can at the moment without hurting the injury. It sort of happened this morning when I ran for a couple hours, and it time just sort of disappeared. So I think there's a sort of benefit there when it comes to marathons and ultra marathons, just altering that time perception in your head. However you may do it, there's probably many ways that you could do it. And I think it's just about focusing on a singular task for an extended period of time. So whether it's walking, or it might even be just working on some other project, or I don't know, this is just spitballing here, but I find it quite interesting because a lot of endurance running is in your mind, and if you're checking your watch and minutes are feeling like, minutes are feeling like hours and the time's dragging by, well then that's going to diminish your performance. So I think there's a performance benefit there to being able to alter your time perception and being able to lock into just being focused on that task. So yeah, I found that's been really cool. And so yeah, now I wanted to talk about the Vibrams, and because I ran that threshold session I did on Friday was in the Vibrams, and like I mentioned in the previous video, I've been having these calf issues ever since I've switched to more cushioned footwear when I'm in the trails, and specifically going up hills, and the Vibrams seem to fix that. And so I tested the theory again, and I ran the whole threshold session on Friday in the Vibrams, and once again just felt fast, felt connected to the ground, didn't get the calf issues. And what I'm feeling is you're able to recruit your entire body, from your toes to your feet to your Achilles to your soleus to, all the way up your leg. Everything's getting maximally recruited because it's such a minimalist shoe. And the instability and the extra cushioning in the footwear when going uphill, personally it seems to be a detriment. And I was thinking about this theory when I was on my run this morning, because I just ran flat this morning, which is another positive. My back handled a good amount of distance on the flat, which is another step in the right direction. But anyway, I was wearing my Topos, which I love. They're a great shoe. I mentioned them in the previous video. But any time I'm wearing extra cushioning, it's so easy to get lazy with my technique. And I felt a couple times where I landed too heavy in them this morning, and it sort of jolted the back a little bit. And when it comes to wearing minimalist footwear, it's as if the receptors in our feet, because they're so highly tuned to the terrain when you're running, and when you can feel that ground beneath you, it's this subconscious communication going from the feet through to your body, where you don't have to think about your technique and you naturally land a lot lighter. Because the flip side to that is, if you don't land light, you're going to slam on your heels and your whole body's going to get a massive shock essentially. So the Vibrams force you to be fleet-footed, they force you to be nimble and efficient with your technique. Whereas with cushioned footwear, you can sort of get away with it a little bit, and your feet aren't sending those same signals to your body, and you can sort of slam a little bit heavier, and you can land a little bit further back on your foot. And I think over time, counting up thousands if not millions of steps over years, what is that doing to the structural integrity of our body, and also just the mechanical efficiency as well. So I've gone back and forth with Vibrams in the years ever since I've found more cushioned footwear, but it's almost like the cushioned footwear is just that new toy that's just, there's this allure to it, but it's made me forget about the purity and the efficiency of just running in these silly looking toe shoes. They force you to be efficient, and it makes me think of all the marathon runners back before there was super shoes, and they had a different sort of elegant stride to them. If you look back at old footage, I actually made a video about this a little while back. If you look back at old footage on running technique, they're a lot lighter on their feet, because they just didn't have all that extra cushioning. They were forced to be more efficient, and there's a beauty and an art to that. But I think from a performance standpoint, if we keep that trained, if we keep training that efficiency, then when we do chuck on the more cushioned shoes and we do chuck on the super shoes, we've already ingrained that more effective technique into our bodies. Even though the cushioning does alter technique, it's almost like in the more minimalist shoe, it's more of a close to the ground gliding motion, whereas in the super shoes you get that vertical bounce and you kind of slam into the foam a little bit more. But yeah, all I'm saying is I'm excited to play around with the different shoes and the different terrains, and just connecting more to what got me into running in the first place, which was chucking on some Vibrams and just going for a run up the hills and just going as hard as I can and just enjoying that connection with the terrain. And that connection is just a really unique feeling that you can't get any other way. And I don't want to lose that anymore. So that's sort of been a silver lining to this injury, is just reminding me to go back to those roots in a sense, just for the pure joy of running. And it's a more stripped back, raw form, but it's just so joyful. So yeah. We're bringing back the Vibrams into the training. I may even take them out to the track and just see how much I can let rip in them. And then when I do chuck on the super foam, there's that, going back to that whole time perception thing, there's a perception change. If you're getting more familiar with that trimmed down Vibram and then you chuck on a super foam, that contrast is so much more exaggerated, so it feels so much more amplified when you do chuck on the super shoes. It's like, wow, I've been running in these tiny little rubbery things and now all of a sudden I'm on a bloody trampoline. Yeah, so that's cool. So I'm looking forward to just blending all of that different training and taking it as far as I can. And so last thing I wanted to touch on is the breath holds that I've been doing up and down the hill. I found on the steep uphills I can hold for one breath and take about 20 to 30 steps on one breath, and I'm trying to extend that out. That's just another way that I'm trying to boost my cardio while I'm injured. And then on the downhill, it's quite amazing. It's anywhere between 60 and 80 steps on one breath, which kind of takes me right the way back to the start of the video where I was talking about the threshold session where I was hitting those 3-minute 30 and quicker on the downhill. And the breath hold sort of confirms that, just how much easier it is cardiovascularly downhill versus uphill. It's quite amazing. I'm almost taking 2 to 3 extra steps, or 2 to 3 times the amount of steps on one breath, downhill versus uphill. So anyway, we're at 24 minutes now. I've rambled on enough. I think I've taken up enough of your time. If you're still watching, I appreciate it. Yeah, things are on the upward trajectory. Things are looking positive. I'm racing, well, let's not call it a race. I'm running in the Rotorua Marathon this Saturday. It's Sunday right now, so we've got 6 days to go. This week, I'm just going to take it really easy. I'm not going to get greedy. I'm very grateful for where my body is at right now compared to where it was at a couple of weeks ago when I was injured and I was lying in bed feeling sorry for myself. So we're not going to get greedy. We're just going to keep walking, doing the strength training, doing the recovery stuff, and using this marathon this Saturday as just a nice steady run. Hopefully I can get through it unscathed, and then it's almost as if instead of a traditional marathon build where you build up to your peak fitness, then you taper down for a couple weeks to try and hit that peak, I'm almost doing a reverse taper where I've been forced to taper down because of this injury, and now I'm almost building up to a peak, which I've actually, funnily enough, theorized in my head in the past, wondering what that would be like, and now I'm forced to see to see how it will be, thanks to this injury. So yeah, let's see how this goes. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video where we'll recap this marathon and yeah, hopefully come out of it unscathed. Cheers.